Welcome back to Auto Exposed. I'm David Krayden, the senior parliamentary columnist for the Western Standard. What a week it's been on Parliament Hill and in Ottawa. We've got lots to expose today. I want to start by saying this. Democracy is for sale in Canada. It's for sale to the Chinese. And Justin Trudeau knew. What did he know? He knew that the Chinese were influencing our federal elections, especially the 2021. That's the one he hasn't confirmed or denied. He's been distracting. He's been gaslighting. He's been doing everything except telling us what he knew and when he knew it. And we need to know both of those things right away. We need to know them because we've got some serious problems here in terms of what our democracy means. And can China actually buy an election? Can they target members of parliament, the candidates, and say, we want this man to win or this woman to lose? What is going on? But we had some fascinating testimony yesterday at the committee that has been set up to look into Chinese election interference, not only in 2019, where candidates in the Greater Toronto area were targeted, but in the 2021 election, where the Chinese apparently bought a minority government for Justin Trudeau. And I want to just go to some testimony last night where Michael Cooper, an Edmonton area MP for the Conservative Party, was doing some querying and some interrogating about what was going on. And I think this is quite fascinating.
Since January 2022, I will give you the dates when we've briefed the Prime Minister formally. We also have informal discussions with him frequently about foreign interference and the activities in the national security community.
So put it this way, will you undertake to provide the dates that the Prime Minister was briefed with respect to Sam Cooper's report of November 7th, 2022?
I can't give you the dates that the Prime Minister was briefed about media reports. I can tell you the dates he was briefed about foreign interference.
Okay, so with that, how many times was the Prime Minister briefed about Beijing's interference in the 2019 and 2021 elections?
The Prime Minister would have been briefed on foreign interference in the elections multiple times between 2019 and 2021 and 2022. We will endeavor to get you those dates.
So you will undertake to provide the dates and the agencies and those involved in briefing the Prime Minister?
We will endeavor to get the dates for you.
Every instance that he was briefed in respect of Beijing's election interference.
I will do my best. But again, I was not in this job at the time.
Well, there you go. That's the most we've had from the federal government in terms of real answers on this question so far. And I think that's quite interesting. We're getting the usual distractions from Justin Trudeau. And it's quite interesting. When he was asked about whether or not he was briefed about Chinese influence in the 2021 election, he didn't really answer the question, did he? No. What he did was say, one of the things we've seen, unfortunately, over the last years is a rise in anti-Asian racism linked to the pandemic, concerns being aroused over people's loyalties. So he then defended the Liberal MP from Don Valley North that a CSIS source has targeted, as said, was a beneficiary of Chinese financial assistance. Now, Han Dong has denied the accusation, but interestingly enough, when the House of Commons voted to say that the Chinese extermination of the Uyghur population constituted a genocide, Mr. Dong was not present for either vote. So I find this extremely interesting, as do a lot of people right now. And Trudeau actually had the temerity, well, if we can call it that, he had the gall. Let's call it what it is. He had the gall to suggest it's not the Chinese interfering in our elections, it's CSIS trying to tell the Liberal Party who its candidates should be. And this is typical distraction from Justin Trudeau. And folks, we've had enough of this. And I tell you, it is time to say Trudeau must go. And this is why in another column this week, I said Chinese election interference spells doom. Doom for Justin Trudeau. And why does it spell doom? Because this is the scandal that seems to be sticking to him. He's been Teflon, political Teflon up to now. Let's face it. He's walked through a variety of scandals during his years in power. He somehow got through the SNC-Lavalin scandal completely unscathed. He threw his attorney general under the bus for that one. You remember that incident? Jody Wilson-Raybould took all the blame for that one, and somehow Trudeau walked away from the allegations that the Trudeau government judicially interfered on behalf of SNC-Lavalin so they could keep the company happy and keep Quebec voters happy. Trudeau walked through that one. He's been accused of a sexual assault incident in his private life by a journalist in British Columbia. Trudeau blithely walked away from that one. And of course, massive hypocrisy on his second career as a gifted blackface performer. And he still has the nerve to call everybody else racist when he's the one who did blackface. So many times he says he couldn't remember how many videos he did, how many pictures were taken. But yet, once again, he managed to survive that one because he arrogantly and blithely walks through scandal. But this scandal seems to be sticking. And why? Why does this scandal seem to be sticking? Because the information, the revelations, the news is coming from the mainstream media for a change. There's been a sea change going on here. The mainstream media has decided they've had enough of Justin Trudeau, obviously. They've decided to stop coddling him, stop defending him, because it's been the Globe and Mail, it's been Global News and others in the National Post that have been picking up on these stories about Chinese influence. Before then, you had to go to the new media like the Western Standard and others to read about what Justin Trudeau was really like. His news conferences are carefully orchestrated, choreographed events where friendly media are chosen to ask the questions. Consequently, he doesn't get very many tough or difficult questions at news conferences, and he talks about what he wants to talk about. I don't think that's going to continue much longer. Ironically, Justin Trudeau is being destroyed by the country he said he most admired. And we all remember that, the basic dictatorship. He said he most admired China because it could, quote, turn its economy around on a dime, unquote. Yes, it can, because it's a totalitarian government that controls what people see, read, buy, sell. And that's what Trudeau apparently admires. But we know that Justin Trudeau has unleashed something. And by saying he knows nothing about this, or by distracting, the questions are coming that much quicker and that much more vociferously. And I think it's quite fascinating that he hasn't really confirmed or denied whether he knew about this. But as you saw in that clip, the National Security Advisor for the Privy Council office, and I didn't even know Canada had a National Security Advisor. That's an office that's well known in the United States, a very powerful office. But I didn't know we had one in Canada. And clearly, Jody Thomas wants to do her job. And I applaud her for that. She just got this job. And of course, she doesn't have all the answers yet, but she's promising to get them. And I can tell you that there's enough people out there in the House of Commons and in the media now who are going to demand the answers, because we've had enough of Justin Trudeau. And I do believe his days are numbered. I believe his days are numbered politically. And no, we cannot have a democracy for sale in this country. And we cannot have a prime minister who obfuscates constantly about racism and other issues that have nothing to do with the issue at hand. But Justin Trudeau is very good at doing that. Now, I want to shift to another issue because it's very important that if conservative leaders in this country really want to see Justin Trudeau resign, if they want to see him leave the office of Prime Minister, then they have to stop being co-opted by his office. They have to stop standing with him at public events and nodding nervously or just looking like they're a deer caught in the headlights when Trudeau exploits those media opportunities to talk about his own issues. And we saw this very clearly last week with a fascinating news conference with Doug Ford, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, the man I call the faux conservative. And just watch this fascinating news clip here.
But let me also be very clear to a really important point that I think some folks are choosing to overlook. In a free democracy, it is not up to unelected security officials to dictate to political parties who can or cannot run. That's a really important principle. We, of course, draw on the expertise every step of the way. But the suggestions we've seen in the media that CSIS would somehow say, no, this person can't run or that person can't run, is not just false, it's actually damaging to people's confidence in our democratic and political institutions.
Prime Minister, just a follow-up on that question on CSIS and Han Dong. Are you saying that they didn't warn you, or were you warned and you chose to dismiss it for those reasons? Just wanted some clarification.
Once again, one of the things we've seen, unfortunately, over the past years is a rise in anti-Asian racism linked to the pandemic. And concerns being arisen around people's loyalties. I want to make everyone understand fully that Han Dong is an outstanding member of our team, and suggestions that he is somehow not loyal to Canada should not be entertained.
Now here we have a very interesting situation. This is a news conference to announce that Ontario has signed on Justin Trudeau's multi-billion-dollar bailout of so-called healthcare in Canada. But Trudeau, of course, wants to talk about China, and he wants to minimize the damage. So this becomes a news conference about China, and as we've already said, Trudeau completely distracts or attempts to gaslight us by talking about the China election interference scandal being all about what? Racism. Yes, it's all about racism, and it's all about racism that was induced by the COVID-19 pandemic, whatever that means. And we know what he's trying to say, but it's absolute garbage. So on the one hand, he's talking about that, but who's in the background there? It's Ontario Premier Doug Ford, looking like a man who's about to be shot. I mean, he looks completely uncomfortable, but by standing next to Justin Trudeau, he is essentially saying, okay, I give you my sanction. I am authorizing this. And it's the last place Doug Ford should be. But as I said, Doug Ford is very friendly to Liberals, and he's been very friendly to Justin Trudeau. And apparently that's really what it's all about with Doug Ford. But I want to also discuss Pierre Poilievre's reaction recently when 3 of his MPs met with a European Union member of Parliament named Christine Anderson. Now, they met with Christine Anderson largely because she said some very strong things about Justin Trudeau after he invoked the Emergencies Act in response to the Freedom Convoy protests. Trudeau went absolutely nuts about this, and he said, We've seen consistently a pattern from conservative politicians, conservative parliamentarians, associating themselves with folks responsible for a particularly vile level of rhetoric and hatred. And their answer is all the same. Oh, we didn't know. Now, what exactly is Trudeau talking about? What vile rhetoric? I have listened to interviews with Ms. Anderson, and yes, she has a problem with illegal immigration and mass immigration into Europe. And she's not a particular friend of the original religion of Islam because it tends to be misogynistic. That's not up for debate. It can be very misogynistic. That's her problem. But to call somebody a vile racist over this is ridiculous. But yet Pierre Poilievre immediately rushed to Justin Trudeau's defense, not his MP's defense. And he said, Christine Anderson's views are vile and have no place in our politics. Poilievre went on to say the MPs were not aware of their visit, blah, 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 blah. Frankly, it would be better if Anderson never visited Canada in the first place. Really? So you're now telling us who should visit Canada because they might have one view you don't agree with? This is unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. Poilievre, quite literally, quite figuratively, sounded and looked like a ventriloquist dummy by saying this. And I tell you, the great Mark Stein came out this week with a fantastic video on YouTube where he took Poilievre to task for this, and he demolished the pusillanimous Poilievre in a YouTube segment where he said, Pierre Poilievre joins the ranks of Tory leaders who thought all you have to do to win over voters was play on the left's terms. And he went on to say that Poilievre has become one of the jelly-spined pseudo-conservatives who preconcede on every issue. And he said that's become a universal phenomenon amongst so-called conservative leaders. Well, Poilievre has got to stop being co-opted by Justin Trudeau. And he should not have been at that Ukraine rally in Toronto a week ago because he had basically endorsed Justin Trudeau's pledge that he's going to keep on giving your taxpayer dollars to Ukraine for as long as it takes and for as much as it takes. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. He's not listening to the grassroots. And conservative leaders need to stop being co-opted by Justin Trudeau. Now, in the time we have left, I want to discuss my interview with the great Seymour Hersh, the Pulitzer Prize winning investigative journalist. One of the best interviews I've ever had. I could have spoken to Mr. Hersh all day, or as he's known, Cy. He was a fantastic interview, and I just want to play a small portion of it right now for you.
But in Europe, it was pretty much, it evolved into the kind of, great places to live and work, and so you're asking the right question. One person I know well who knows that part of the world very well, a military officer, but in intelligence, said to me, well, the question now is who's going to be the first country to leave NATO? I mean, I'm serious, because he started something, Joe Biden, that he didn't understand. And that's largely because he's surrounded by these, I call him Winkin, Blinken, and Nod, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and Jake Sullivan, who ran this little White House operation I was talking about when they wanted to have options on what to do. He was the guy to set up the stuff in Norway in a way. And what's her name? Victoria Nuland, who's the undersecretary, whose husband was one of the leading neocons that pushed in after 9/11 to go to Iraq. So Kagan, and I mean, it's just I'm a journalist, but I'm also a citizen, and I think there's something, like you do. There's something really wrong with what we're doing in Ukraine, to the point where the president of the United States is willing to throw Germany and Western Union to the wind.
Yeah,
he's afraid they wouldn't support him more in Ukraine for the gas, so he knocks off the gas. That's what he did, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, fascinating interview because Seymour Hersh is not only saying that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipelines, left them at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, but that by doing so, they have turned their backs on Europe and an 80-year-old policy of looking out for Western Europe. And by cutting off the gas, by insisting Europe and specifically Germany go in all the way against Russia and with Ukraine in this bloody war that could become a nuclear confrontation, Seymour Hersh is saying this is absolute insanity because Joe Biden has lost control of this procedure, clearly, and it is unraveling so quickly. And it's very important that the questions have to be asked. Now, Seymour Hersh would not say that the U.S. blowing up Nord Stream constituted an act of war against Germany, against NATO, against Russia, but he says the question needs to be asked. And this is why the United States continues to deny it had any role in the sabotage, because it can't answer the question. It can't admit, because as far as I'm concerned, yes, this would constitute an act of war. And he is breaking up NATO because Germany is freezing this winter. Lots of Europeans are freezing this winter because they don't have liquid natural gas from Russia. But that's no problem for Joe Biden. It's all about unseating Putin. And he doesn't seem to care if there's a nuclear war as a consequence. So here we are on the precipice of a nuclear holocaust, and we're moving faster towards that because of idiots in the military today who have forgotten nobody wins a nuclear war. I want to end it there. Please become a subscriber to the Western Standard. Please continue to watch Auto Exposed every week. We're having a heck of a time getting you the news that you need to hear. And for Auto Exposed, I'm David Krayden. Bye for now.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year for